Good evening and welcome to the Membership Expansion Ad Hoc Subcommittee for Wednesday, November 17th, 2021. This is for the San Francisco Community Roundtable, and I will waste no time. We will pass it on to Michelle Rodriguez to do our presentation.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We're gonna, let me just bring up my PowerPoint and we'll be set.
And as you're getting that ready, Michelle, I would like to give instructions to the members of the public on how they may give public comment. So during the period of the public comment, you may use the raise hand feature in order to indicate your desire to speak. If you are calling in by phone, you may press *9 and you will have 2 to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, here we go.
Angela, I think you have to take your PowerPoint off so that Michelle can put hers up on the screen.
Okay. Do you see the PowerPoint? Is my PowerPoint showing?
Yes, it is.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for attending this evening's Membership Expansion Ad Hoc Subcommittee meeting. This is a public meeting of the recommendation to the Roundtable membership. There will be adequate time during this meeting for public feedback, and at the end, we'll set aside some time for a recommendation of the subcommittee to the full membership. The subcommittee, we had several roundtable members who volunteered to be part of this subcommittee, and the officers of the roundtable, including the chair and vice chair, appointed members to reflect a balance between the north, central, and southern portion of the roundtable member cities. And you can see here the members that were selected at the cities they represent and the area that they were from. What I'll do is for each of the subcommittee meetings, I'll give a briefing on the agenda, the content that was reviewed, and the conclusions of that meeting. The Brown Act enables the subcommittee not to have public meetings, and they chose to do that for some of their meetings because we wanted to get into a high level of technical detail to get into. And of course, today is a public meeting, and then the public will have an opportunity at the membership meeting in December to also give feedback. All the public comment that was received in terms of writing, I'll review those as part of this meeting today. So during meeting number 1, which was scheduled for August the 25th, we reviewed for the agenda, the purpose and the schedule of the subcommittee. We discussed the member constituent comments and the historical review of the service area, and we identified and prioritized key issues. And so the purpose of the subcommittee was to establish criteria under which new members might be admitted to the roundtable and evaluate funding needs to address ongoing operations, potential expanded membership, and other related issues. The deliverables then were to make a recommendation to the membership on member expansion, related funding requirements to meet expected operational requirements. So I've separated the feedback that we discussed at the meeting into member and constituent feedback and non-member feedback that we discussed. The member constituent feedback that were reported by the subcommittee members were to expand membership would take focus away from the communities close to the airport. We have to look at this topic. We've looked at this topic multiple times in the past. We've acted against it. Why are we taking time to revisit it again today? In other words, is there any new information that we know about that would change our minds? Concern about the dilution of resources and priorities, and that we felt we had an obligation to our existing membership. The existing operations, including our subcommittees, felt like we needed additional staffing and resources to meet existing needs. We have current work to accomplish for our existing members, and there are other pending member issues such as ground-based noise that we felt we needed to address first. The time and effort that it would take to add non-member cities from other counties would take time away from existing important work and resources. And at that time, we had received no municipal requests to join. So why are we diverting staff time and effort? So the non-member feedback that we discussed was the more members on the roundtable, more contributions, but the size might be unwieldy. How we kind of wanted to better understand how non-member counties were impacted, and there was a request for maps. There was a question about, well, Santa Cruz County, aren't they as impacted as Santa Clara County? And if we are considering expanding, should it be one city, two cities, one county, multiple counties? And we wanted to better look at funding options for new members and how does that relate to existing operational needs. We discussed other options for getting greater participation instead of modifying the membership. And there was some question about whether the select committee arrival path over Palo Alto is a regional issue or a multiple airport issue. And we discussed non-member support communications that we had received by 3 emails by Darlene Yapley on 6/1, 6/22, and 8/23, and the Congresswoman Eshu's letter in support of adding additional membership of 8/19. So in terms of the service review, we reviewed the formation of the San Francisco International Roundtable and the reason for the one-time member expansion, which was to address significant expansion at the airport at that time in their development plan. We discussed the need to provide flight density maps before and after the select committee or next gen to better understand the contribution of SFO or the SFO San Jose and Oakland air flights. We talked about the need for a regional airspace entity that was needed and discussed staff's meeting with ABAG MTC and that conversation that they are very willing to host regional meetings, but they wanted to really have it narrowed down into who was going to participate, focusing on roundtables and airport level discussion, and that the topics be very clear and that the options and alternatives be discussed and clear ahead of time. We discussed San Mateo County's contribution in their membership, including the $12,000 that they give annually, the cost of the 2 part-time staff, as well as what they don't charge and provide, which included IT support, attorney support, manager support, as well as finance department support. We discussed staff resources for standing committees and the need for additional support and frequency of those subcommittees, particularly as we start to think about what additional topics need to be addressed by those subcommittees regarding ground-based noise, alternative metrics, modification of the airport director's report, implementation of night hush and GBAS. We also reviewed the Anna Eshu letter in support of expansion. We reviewed the SC historical purpose and its status. Also, the subcommittee was made aware of the November 11th decision by that roundtable to disband. And as they continue to look for a fiscal sponsor, that those individual cities can continue to comment on airport impacts, both to the airport and FAA and whoever else they'd like to comment on. We did receive at that time a letter from the city of Palo Alto requesting membership. We discussed adding new members in options of single city, multiple cities, and multiple counties. And we discussed the appropriateness at that time when SCSC existed for individual cities to be members on multiple counties. So 3 topics raised to the top, and in conclusion regarding expanding membership, that we felt that it took focus away from addressing noise effects to communities close to the airport, that it diluted limited staff resources further and away from the strategic plan and work plan priorities, that our existing membership deserve that we focus on those priorities, that our standing committees needed additional staff time, frequency of meetings and resources, and that they wanted staff to outreach to the town of Colma and the city of East Palo Alto, who are in the San Francisco and San Mateo counties, and the only 2 members that aren't members. Since then, we did outreach. Town of Colma has since held a city council meeting where they authorized budget allocation to become members, which will be considered at the December meeting, and have assigned a member and a backup member from their council. Regarding regional flight, there's a need for regional airplane noise effect discussions and solutions, and that San Francisco arrivals affects many counties, not just one city. And so before I go on to subcommittee 2, I want to just stop here and ask any of the subcommittee members whether there's anything I missed, or if they'd like to add anything more to this subcommittee 1 meeting.
I just want to add just one thought. When we appointed the members of the subcommittee, do you recall, I think the majority had voted in favor of expansion at that point when we appointed them. I think there was only 1 member who had voted against it. And so do you remember how that went?
You mean a vote on membership, or
when we voted to form the subcommittee to explore the expansion? I believe the majority of the members of this subcommittee had voted in favor of creating that subcommittee and in favor of looking at that expansion. That's important, just so that
yes,
we show that there was no bias there, or actually if there was a bias, was in favor.
I agree.
Okay,
and I think that's a good point for the staff report too. Anybody else on subcommittee 1 before I go on? No one. Subcommittee meeting number 2, staff returned with the flight path review, and we discussed membership equity. And so for flight path number 2, we reviewed 10 maps. We compared the 2013 to 2019 flight path density for the Bay Area, including San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose airports. We did side-by-side comparisons for 2013 and 19 departure, as well as side-by-side comparisons for 2013 and 19 arrivals. We did the same for San Francisco for that same frequency, and we included those maps in your packets. We also discussed membership equity, and equity that was discussed from a membership standpoint is that equity is representation of members inside the 65 CNEL because of the significant effect that they are experiencing. That we have kind of a need to address existing members' noise effects, such as ground-based noise, adequate noise metrics, and noise mitigation. We reviewed Congresswoman Spears' letter received 9/29 that was not in support of membership expansion. And Brian Perkins is here representing her office this evening. We also discussed non-member equity, and that was that non-members are feeling the impact of airport noise. They don't feel like they have a viable and credible way to address their concerns, that the San Francisco International Airport Roundtable is seen as the viable and effective way of addressing noise concerns. SCSC at that time had an ongoing operation, which was unclear, and now we know the outcome of it. Providing their own input directly to the FAA, NAC, and to roundtables by the community, and they have the ability to pay for aviation consultants directly. The question was, how do we harness that knowledge and base and experiences and advocacy? And that was unclear, and it remains to be an issue. Next Gen was definitely seen as narrowing pathways originally brought up by Santa Cruz County and Santa Cruz City. So I want to say that the flight path conclusions, the member cities are clearly affected by Next Gen. And I'll say that just kind of in summary, that in comparing the arrival procedures for 2013 through 19, what the conclusions were was that our existing members, as an example, San Mateo, Burlingame, and Foster City, pre-Next Gen had a medium density, but post had a high density. Whereas San Bruno, Pacifica, and Hillsborough on arrivals had no density, but then went to low density. Redwood City and Menlo Park, pre-Next Gen, had low density, then went up to high density, so a significant impact. Whereas San Francisco went from low to medium high density. And so there was some recognition that these were significant changes that our member cities saw. Whereas East Palo Alto, who is a non-member, went from a low impact to a much wider area of impact, and their medium high impact area went to a very high density. Whereas Palo Alto was at a high density and there was no change to the high density. There was some areas of low density that went to medium high, whereas Mountain View had no change. And on the departures, very similar. Existing cities, San Bruno, Millbrae, and Hillsborough had a minor area of medium high, and that went up to a much broader area of medium to high. So there was much more residents being affected. Similar, San Francisco had medium high areas, it went up to high areas. Many other counties being shown on this map, Contra Costa, Alameda, and others, many cities, Danville, Walnut Creek, and Moraga had impact, whereas Palo Alto remained pre-Next Gen low, post-Next Gen low. Mountain View also was low. So our member cities are clearly affected by Next Gen. We're focusing on existing work plans, staffing, and resource needs related to membership noise and effects. The concerns was that GBAS might further affect flight density. Regional arrival and departure noise effects is beyond the scope and role of the San Francisco International Roundtable. That members inside the 65 CNEL contour are impacted significantly. Some flight path issues are regional and affect many counties. Our equity definition at the conclusion focused on our primary purpose, our values, and our member cities, that we focus more fully on our existing standing subcommittee work and our member issues, and that those new issues might be wrapped into the next round and in this work plan of ground-based noise impacts in 65 CNEL and metrics and so on. We recognize we are not a regional roundtable, but we may participate in regional air discussions. And with regards to SCSC roundtable, who was organized for counties, Santa Clara County and Santa Cruz County, we support their distinct role and responsibilities, but they're not the San Francisco International Roundtable role or responsibilities. We also reviewed, as part of this meeting, the Congresswoman Spears letter that I mentioned earlier, as well as we received 10 other member opposition communications from the residents in Hillsborough, Burlingame, and San Mateo in opposition of the membership expansion. And then we received non-member support communications from the city of Mountain View, letter to become a member, as well as Darlene Yapley's communications of 10/20, 10/23, and 11/5. So before we go on to meeting number 3, are there any subcommittee members that wanted to add anything that I might have missed or add to their impression of meeting number 2? Thank you. I'll go on to meeting number 3. At meeting number 3, we discussed our recommendation to our membership and the public meeting content. Our conclusion was to complete an in-depth public presentation, providing an overview of each meeting to date and our final draft recommendation for public feedback. We do want that final recommendation that goes to the members to include some staff time and resource recommendations to meet existing member needs. For staff to approach the town of Coleman and East Palo Alto to become members, and to continue to express support for a South Bay Roundtable and a regional airspace entity. And so in June, staff outlined in a staff report the possible actions: no action, don't do a thing, deny a request, create ad hoc subcommittee, approve a membership expansion, support a regional roundtable. And so the recommendation of this subcommittee is no amendment to the existing MOU, continue to focus on our existing member communities. They're the most affected by significant noise exposure. Encourage formation of a regional entity to address regional air flight noise. Address in our next work plan and budget expansion of efforts focusing on our existing members. Encourage SCSC Roundtable to continue to flourish to address Santa Clara County and Santa Cruz County airspace needs. I'll open it again to our subcommittee members. And I guess I did want to recognize that we've received a number of communications since our packet went out. And those were letters from Peter Grace from Brisbane, town of Colma, asking for membership. R. Newman, Elizabeth Newman, I wrote down, but I think that's a wrong last name. Palo Alto requesting to become a member as well. So I will ask then from the subcommittee if they want to add anything. Did I miss anything in this recommendation or anything else before I turn it back over to the chair?
I would just like through the chair to clarify for the record, it is Elizabeth Lopez and Rich Newman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle, if I could add one comment.
Go ahead, Al.
Ricardo, I'm sorry.
Member Royce.
Yes, I did. We did note the funding issue and the fact that San Mateo County underwrote a lot of the costs with respect to this subcommittee or with respect to the SFO roundtable. And there was a question as to what the funding would be, and would Santa Clara County or Santa Cruz County contribute proportionate funding or greater funding to cover the cost. So that was an open issue in my mind, is the funding that would be coming from other counties if their member cities became part of our group. So I would just note that for the record, and I don't think we got an answer.
And Member Royce, while you have the chair, the table here, any thoughts on the recommendation and how we arrived at that, or how you in your mind arrived at that?
Sure, I'd be happy to share it. I supported the review of this again, even though I noted it had been reviewed a number of times in the past. But I thought the arguments made in our general SFO roundtable discussion were compelling and warranted another look. I have been concerned and continue to be concerned about a couple of different factors. And so coming to the committee, I was leaning favorably. I would start with a point of view open to change. So my point of view was that fact that we have citizens on the peninsula that are affected by airport noise, and they really have no access to addressing their concerns. And they're not really concerned about boundaries, county-wide or man-made or what have you. They just know they got a problem, they want to get it solved. And that still is a concern of mine. I also value the contributions made by the members from cities outside of this region or outside of the membership. I think has been very valuable, and I know I have relied on it. But as I gone through and listened to the member comments, I came to the point that the recommendation that was proposed was what I would support. And I did so for 3 reasons. Number one, I'm not sure we've addressed the ability to deal with the dilution of resource issue or dilution of funding issue or dilution of focus. but more importantly, the dilution of resources. I've not yet to see how we would pay for an expanded scope and expanded range of members. And that was a concern of mine. Number two, and I'll be honest with you, I heard a lot of constituent feedback, not just from Hillsborough and not just the written comments, but oral comments, including from other council members that expressed concern that that would not be in the best interest of the member communities, the ones most affected by the noise, particularly ground-based noise on departures, and that they felt that we need to represent them first and foremost before we look to expand membership. And Congressman Spira alluded to that as well, that the members closest to that airport bear the greatest burden, and anything that would potentially dilute from a focus on them would not be in the best interest of anybody. They bear the biggest burden, and we need to make sure we don't shortchange them. And that was a compelling fact with me as well. But I would also look to the fact that I'm not sure that expanding the membership, and I'm not sure expanding by one would be feasible. I can easily see we'd clearly get to 5 pretty quickly, maybe larger. We did hear a request from somebody in the East Bay that wanted to know whether or not it'd be open for their membership. And I'm not sure this is a body meant to be a regional body. I really think that this body was formed to address issues most connected to those closest to the airport. And there ought to be a regional body that addresses regional noise airport concerns. And I would lobby for a regional board, but I'm not sure this committee could effectively do that. When you start adding members, whether it's 5 members, 6 members, 7 members, not only becomes a large group which starts to stifle the discussion, the length of the meetings become a little unwieldy too, and that's a concern of mine as well. So I looked at those different factors, and I've got a list of other factors too, and concluded on the whole that I'm not yet prepared to expand the membership unless I get some assurance the funding is there, the resources there, and the focus is such that the people most affected close to the communities are not adversely affected by this. So that was my thinking on it.
Well, very nicely said. Thank you very much. Any other members want to share their views? And actually, Member Diego, you might correct me that somebody today said that this issue has been brought forth at least 5 times. I remember 2, so I don't know if you would care to comment.
Yeah, I haven't been keeping score on how many times, but it has come up quite often over the decades. And I certainly think that Member Royce kind of summed things up the best. But, many of us came into this ad hoc meeting, as you indicated, Chair Ortiz, with the idea that we were open to truly exploring the idea of having additional members at the table with us, because there could be, many benefits to that. But as we looked at the practical application of that, and we took this, the best part of this ad hoc committee was it was a timeout for us to take assessment of where we're at as a round table. And we bumped into deficiencies that we know we need to address, because I'm not sure that we're doing an adequate job with the member cities that are involved. And so it's an opportunity for us to build a better roundtable. And moving forward, I don't know if there'll be a 6th attempt to add members, but I think at this time, we looked internally and we found some deficiencies that we want to correct, and adding membership would only compound, prevent that from happening.
Great, thank you, and thank you both for your participation. You guys have been great members. So, Mr. Vice Chair, would you care to comment on your mindset?
I would. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Michelle, for your presentation. As you recall, I was and continue to be fully supported of the formation of this ad hoc subcommittee and discussing the possibility of adding new members to the San Francisco Roundtable. And as you could see from the presentation from Ms. Rodriguez, this ad hoc subcommittee did go to extreme length and really looked at every possibility and every impact from every angle, if you will, to our, first and foremost, our existing members, because this is whom we are here to serve. And then with that in mind, we also explored the possibility of adding, for example, Palo Alto was really the main focus, because Palo Alto was the one who wanted to join. And then later we got the Mountain View letter as well. in looking at all the things that Mr. Rodriguez had presented, it became problematic for many reasons. I'll mention a few. I think Member Royce and Member Adiego really put it very well, and I echo pretty much everything that they have said. And I will just add to it that from my perspective, there is no question about it that Palo Alto has been impacted by NextGen. The question really came to, is it possible for me, in my view, for the roundtable just to add Palo Alto or just to add Palo Alto and Mountain View? And for me, if I have to apply the same logic, if I have to apply a certain logic to Palo Alto, I have to apply it to every other community that will reach out to the San Francisco roundtable requesting to join. In my view, and I think I mentioned that in one of the public comments, Santa Cruz could be a possibility because they are impacted heavily too. I mean, life changed overnight. I was on the select committee, and one of the first meetings that we attended was in Santa Cruz, and the hall was full of people, and you could see and you could hear that life was changed upside down for those folks. So it became, okay, granted, Palo Alto is really having this issue. Then the question came, is this a San Francisco roundtable? And the scope of the San Francisco roundtable, is this more as a regional issue? And where do you stop? And you cannot really say, we could just put the criteria to fit this one or two cities or two communities and not the rest. You just can't do that, in my view, at least. So the conclusion for me, it's really a regional problem in a way. You need, basically not just a regional problem, you need a regional body to address the challenges and at the same time, keep the roundtable, San Francisco roundtable whole and focused on its current membership and on San Mateo County and San Francisco roundtable and San Francisco County. So those are my comments at this point, Chair. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you very much. I give other members, anybody, Terry, Member O'Connell, would you care to comment?
Sure, thank you. So I came in as the lone dissenting vote to expansion to this subcommittee. And I was truly impressed with the time and consideration that all of the subcommittee gave to the concerns that were raised. And, I was very surprised that the discussions were as open and candid as they were. So I think that's truly a good sign when a committee can come together and really air out all the sides of an issue. I do think that, as Michelle pointed out, a lot of it comes down to dilution of resources and time of the existing committees. Personally, when I came on, we were hoping to have standing committees for ground-based noise, takeoffs, and departures. Right now, we're focusing on ground-based noise because I think that's the first place to start. And the takeoff noise has been put on the back burner. And I'm happy for that to wait. We know that it's going to come when we get to it, but to keep adding extra focus would be something that would keep putting those things on the back burner. I think that the member communities that have really taken the time over the years to participate, and we're still holding our breath as far as getting a good outcome. But I think we can make more headway if we stick to our original focus. And I truly appreciate all the impacts and the concerns that this committee has brought up. And I am very appreciative of that. So thank you. I think that Member Royce really summed it up perfectly for me on the direction that we should go. So thank you.
Thank you, Member O'Connell. I see Member Taylor, your video just came on. Or would you care to comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I really appreciate all of the discussions that we've had. As you all recall, I was definitely a supporter of expanding the roundtable. I actually was only considering Palo Alto, partly selfishly, because we share the same arrival path, and this we have the same noise impact. One of the pieces that I have been concerned about, that, as I'm sure those of you that have been on the roundtable for several years, that hasn't been addressed is actually being addressed, and that's doing some noise monitoring. My community is impacted from 6 a.m. to midnight from general aviation, and probably from 3, maybe 4 a.m. until 2 a.m. And so we really don't have a whole lot of time where there isn't something flying over us. And unfortunately, the airspace, whatever flies over us, impacts our internet connection. It impacts if you use digital antenna, and it also impacts your internet. And so I'm just glad that we are doing some noise monitoring on this contour. I do still support expanding the extension to Palo Alto. And I say that because of the amount of advocacy that isn't happening on this end in South County. I think the noise, having lived in 5 cities in San Mateo County, I actually used to live directly across the highway from San Bruno, from San Francisco Airport in San Bruno. And so I am very familiar with how noisy it is, and how harmful it is to your quality of life. My husband read that you lose 7 years off your life living next to the airport. And so it took us 8 years, but we did move to Menlo Park. And so now we're on the other end of it. And so I talked to Darlene Yapley over the weekend, and something that I've been thinking about, because South, Central, and North counties have different impacts, and what that would look like in the near future. We can't address everybody's concern at one time. And since work had already started, the work plan had already begun, to try to shift resources now wouldn't be, actually, it wouldn't be, I think, fair for existing members that have been trying to advocate for specific things. And so I just wanted to share that piece of it. I'm still supportive of Palo Alto being a part of the airport roundtable. I do understand you all's positions as far as why not. But I just want to share that piece with you, and thank you.
Thank you, Member Taylor. Now I see Member D, your video has come on. So
thank you, Chair Ortiz. And the easy answer would be ditto, but I would add 2 more thoughts, and the members have been very articulate, as well as the public comments. The 2 concerns I have, or maybe 2 comments I'd like to make, and Member O'Connell hinted at it, is I'm still concerned that we don't have enough existing resources to meet member city concerns. I mean, I'm a boomerang member of the roundtable. Many of these issues were there when I was on the roundtable a long time ago, not as long as Member Adiago, but they're still need to be addressed. And I appreciate Brisbane's patience, but their patience shouldn't go on forever. And I'm really concerned we don't have enough resources today to meet member city issues. Having served along with Vice Chair Hindi on the Select Committee, I truly believe the issues are a regional issue. And the Airport Roundtable isn't set up to be a regional body. And so I'm fully supportive of advocacy to establish some sort of regional body to look at the 3 airports as well as the smaller airports, and how we can work together to mitigate and answer public issues with regard to airplane noise. We can't do it at one roundtable at a time, or by adding another city, 1 city at a time. It is truly a regional issue.
thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair Ortiz.
Okay, so do I have any other members? Am I missing somebody? I don't think so. So let me conclude with my thoughts. You guys have said it beautifully. I agree with everything you said, but the one issue that there's some issues that we could work around. The one issue that I just saw that was can't work around is the issue of where we draw the boundaries. We talked about Palo Alto, but then we also had Mountain View, and as somebody else said, we could have talked about the Santa Cruz, and Vallejo is also impacted by airport noise. So where do we stop? So at some point we need to draw a boundary. And so having acknowledged that, I figure why change our existing boundaries and go through all the trouble, because there would be a lot to work out. There's a lot of details in the MOU and in the funding that would require a lot of work on our part. And again, that would be taking resources away from other items that we really need to work on. So I'm very comfortable that we gave this a real try. We talked about it, and then people came in with the attitude of, we're going to figure out a way to add Palo Alto in, and we came out with our conclusion is that it's too difficult, too unwieldy, and too damaging to our existing membership. And with that, I'm going to just agree with the most of my counterparts who said this. So with that, I'm ready to open it then to public comment. Michelle, is that how we're doing this? Or I do see Brian Perkins from Congresswoman Jackie Spears' office with us. And I'm not sure if Brian wants to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We don't have any further comments. The subcommittee members have made excellent comments. We just appreciate all the hard work that everyone did, because it's obvious that there's an extraordinary amount of time and thought that went into all of the analysis. And if we need any more resources, we'll do our best to try to provide them for the subcommittee and the roundtable.
I'll be calling you, sir.
Yes, I know I'm on speed dial for you. I realize that.
Thank you. And then with that, then we're going to open it to the members of the public. And so if I can ask, please, everybody who is interested in speaking, if you could raise your hand right now so I can gauge how much time we allocate. Just based on the number of hands, we can come up, and I'm just going between either 2 minutes or 3 minutes. So at this point, I see 4 hands, 5 hands. Okay, now we're getting a few more. Okay, I'm still. Okay, I don't see any more. It seems like it's a manageable number of hands. So we're going to go ahead, Angela, with 3 minutes. Is that okay with everybody?
Chair Ortiz, you do see 10 hands raised, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, 3 minutes is fine.
It'll be 30 minutes, and then that'll leave you 15 minutes to do your vote.
That was kind of the math I was working on. So with that, Angela, I will give it to you to let our public speakers in.
Thank you, Chairman Ortiz. So I will first be calling on Mr. Mark Scholl, followed by Rebecca Ward. So Mr. Scholl, please accept this request, unmute your microphone and begin speaking.
Thank you, Mark Scholl from Palo Alto. I was disappointed by the Ad Hoc Subcommittee's draft recommendation to again deny Palo Alto membership in the SFO Airport Community Roundtable, and to repeat rationalizations that just don't hold up. Air traffic at lower altitudes is simply not regional. Airspace is rigidly separated by airport for safety reasons. The facts are that Palo Alto is under SFO's dedicated airspace, which is a real, well-defined thing. Arbitrarily labeling one part of SFO's low altitude airspace as regional creates a fiction that may make members feel about denying membership, but there is simply no basis for this assertion. It is also fair to point out that the roundtable has long requested and been responsible for significant air traffic changes in the airspace over Palo Alto, including formal written requests to the FAA for the BSR track shift and the creation of the Pirate Star. It is inconsistent to assert, as the roundtable has to date, that it has authority to recommend major air traffic changes over Palo Alto, and at the same time declare this airspace regional for membership purposes. But the bigger issue seems to be the charge that Palo Alto will somehow prevent progress on longstanding issues. I think the opposite is true, and after 25 years of applying for membership, I think it will be productive to allow Palo Alto to at least present how it can contribute. Even without this, Palo Alto has shown its commitment and ability to support all of the different challenges facing SFO impacted communities. One or more Palo Alto City Council members have attended essentially every roundtable meeting for years to show commitment and to learn the ropes. This roundtable is a big advantage, which that at least currently SFO leadership wants to reduce noise. That's actually rare, but it will take cooperation and the resources of all of us, including citizen volunteers, to make this happen. Moreover, it is hard to see how the FAA will engage seriously if we are not all working together as one. Please vote to include Palo Alto as a full member of the SFO Community Roundtable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scholl. I will now call on Rebecca Ward, followed by Jennifer. Ms. Ward, go ahead.
Thank you. This is Rebecca Ward from Palo Alto. I'd like to make a few points. First, on the recommendation to expand the next work plan and budget. Yes, the current budget cannot support the number of meetings desired by the 3 subcommittees, and it needs to be increased. This is true regardless of membership expansion. But we don't understand how adding Palo Alto is viewed as unsupportable from a budget perspective, while inviting East Palo Alto and Colma is not. The reality is that these communities in Palo Alto face similar issues to existing members. Adding them in Palo Alto does not change workload, it really adds resources. Second, as mentioned, the SCSC roundtable is not flourishing, it's dissolving. Third, on transparency, while we appreciate today's public meeting, it was stated that the process to review membership expansion would be transparent. However, some exhibits listed in the 929 subcommittee meeting agenda have not been shared, such as the HMMH presentation and the population and income comparisons. Fourth, on who's impacted. The recent FAA NES survey makes clear that communities adjacent and near airports, as well as communities away from airports, are highly impacted. NextGen made things worse. Procedures are lower and have been tightly concentrated over specific communities. NextGen impacts are real and have nothing to do with political boundaries such as county lines. Palo Alto is heavily impacted by SFO traffic, as stated by Director Sotero, and is more impacted than some roundtable communities, as stated by Chair Ortiz in the June meeting. This is evident in the HMMH tract density maps in the meeting packet. Therefore, Palo Alto should be a member of the roundtable that addresses SFO impacts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. I will now call on Ms. Lynn Israelit, followed by Allison Ho. Ms. Israelit?
Hi. Thank you very much for considering this proposal of expanding the size of the roundtable. But I actually am speaking to oppose that for the very reasons that all of you have already stated, and I won't waste your time by going over the reasons because I think they are all very valid. In fact, just having this new subcommittee to look at this potential expansion took away from the critical work that the ground-based noise committee had been supposed to be accomplishing this past year. And you were only able, because of limited resources, to meet twice this year as opposed to meeting every other month or every quarter. So it's clear that there are limited resources, that smaller groups can be more effective and more efficient in decision-making, and that adding more members to the roundtable committee would not be in the best interests of the local communities who are so heavily impacted by San Francisco Airport, which is why the roundtable was originally started. So I just want to thank you again for looking at this proposal, but I appreciate the reasons that you have decided against expansion, and I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Thank you, Ms. Israelit. I will now call on Ms. Allison Ho, followed by Marianne Riggs. You may unmute your mic. Okay,
Hello,
go
can you
ahead.
hear me?
Yes, go
Hi.
ahead.
I first of all wanted to thank you all for taking the time to do this committee. It's so very important. I am speaking against expansion. I have great empathy for everyone that's affected by airplane noise. But the ground-based noise seems a step more explosive. It's very hard for any residents within their home to block against it. I've put in laminated windows, greater insulation in my home. And in particular, the nighttime noise when we're trying to sleep is just makes it hard for the nervous system to relax and get a good night's sleep. And you never quite know when the airplane noise is going to have that explosive effect. And so I think that it's just really a humane thing to find solutions to limit this ground-based noise at night. And so my hope is that this organization will put a focus on that. And so I do wholeheartedly support keeping it within the current membership. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I will now call on Ms. Marianne Riggs, followed by Greer Stone. Ms. Riggs?
Thank you. The reason I'm checking in is because the ground-based noise is the thing that got me going in the first place. And it seems like it's an issue in and of itself and is very specific to the geographic region. So I wanted to check in and say that this committee is addressing that, and I appreciate that so much. And I certainly appreciate all the other committees that might be able to address the other issues. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call on Greer Stone, followed by Darlene Yapley. Mr. Stone?
Good evening, Chair Ortiz and honorable members of the subcommittee. My name is Greer Stone. I'm the Palo Alto City Council member who was assigned as a liaison to the SFO Roundtable, and I'm speaking tonight in support of Palo Alto's inclusion on the Roundtable. First, I want to thank the committee for taking the time to consider our request for membership. As you're aware, the Santa Clara-Santa Cruz Roundtable voted to disband at the end of this calendar year. This was not a decision anyone on the Roundtable wanted to make, but was the inevitable consequence of the Cities Association of Santa Clara County terminating their status as our fiscal agent. We no longer have any official regional representation on these issues. I hope you've all had time to review the letter signed by the mayor of Palo Alto on behalf of the city. This letter reaffirms Palo Alto's ongoing desire to be a voting member of this roundtable. Our interests are aligned, and we believe Palo Alto can make a strong contribution to the existing membership. Our letter restates what we all know. Palo Alto is highly impacted by SFO, and due to NextGen, is now the merge point for 3 arrival procedures, which represents 60% of SFO arrivals. Surely, membership expansion criteria can be defined well enough to ensure only those cities most impacted like Palo Alto can be admitted. Finally, several members of this committee have acknowledged the arbitrariness of defining membership based on county lines. This committee proposes to approach the city of East Palo Alto in order to encourage their membership. And I agree, East Palo Alto should be a member of this roundtable. But to include East Palo Alto and exclude Palo Alto would be a policy decision that places priority on arbitrary political boundaries rather than true impact. If I may quote Vice Chair Hindi from your June meeting, he said, "Look at Palo Alto's situation from the lens of equity and justice. Look at their request as a just request because of the impact they have been experiencing due to NextGen." I also want to thank Member Taylor for her thoughtful remarks and desire to include Palo Alto. Member Taylor accurately noted that Palo Alto shares the same impacts as Menlo Park, and we can work together as regional partners to address an issue that impacts us all. Now, I acknowledge the concern of members that opening your membership to new cities is concerning. However, this roundtable can control the membership expansion by qualifying membership to only cities who are highly impacted, as Palo Alto is, and most of you have acknowledged, and contiguous to existing members, as Palo Alto is, being the direct neighbor of San Mateo County and Menlo Park. For the benefit of Palo Alto's residents and the potential positive contributions to the SFO Roundtable's mission, the City of Palo Alto humbly requests membership on the Roundtable as a voting member. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. I will now call on Darlene Yapley, followed by Eric Stolzeth. Ms. Yapley.
Thank you for your time. The recommendation focuses on existing members. I hope the focus should be on the problems of existing members. Why? Recently, the roundtable reached out to East Palo Alto and Colma to join the roundtable. These cities are obviously not existing members, but face the similar problems of existing members. Thumbs up for recruiting them despite communications opposing additions on rationale such as don't dilute ground-based noise, few members as possible, towns further away from San Francisco will take away valuable time from ground-based noise. Adding a few members with similar problems to the existing members can be done without diluting or changing the roundtable priorities, plans, and workload. That's probably why the roundtable invited East Palo Alto and Colma to join. It's not a zero-sum game. Some problems are common to all, like flights, night flights, noise monitoring and reporting and metrics. Other problems are specific to some, but are supported by all. For example, the roundtable created the ground-based noise subcommittee and approved the 50K study. The 3 subcommittees would not change the number of meetings or the priorities would not change. We should not conflate the fact that there's under-resourcing today with the members with the same problems and adding new members with the same problems. The argument that adding Palo Alto would dilute priorities and plans does not hold because it faces the similar existing member issues like Colma and East Palo Alto. So the issue is not about adding members. It's really about adding members outside of San Francisco and San Mateo counties. And Director Sotero commented, I never thought of the communities as having boundaries. I thought of the communities as those communities impacted by SFO operations. What's missing from this is representation by Palo Alto. What seems absent in the packet is criteria based on noise impacts. And I really hope it's understood that noise density maps is not noise impacts. Monitor Site 14, South San Francisco has 54 events. Site 18 in Daly City has 61 events. All of you can say they have the same flight density. And you know what? Daly City has twice as much noise with only 7 more events a day. So the logic you're using about density maps is off. So the criteria exists. I ask that you use it to make differentiation and let a few people in, and I'm talking 2 maybe members. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yapley. I will now call on Eric Filseth, followed by Mary Jo Fremont. Mr. Filseth.
Can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. My name's Eric Filseth, and I am also a member of Palo Alto City Council. And I want to thank the subcommittee for the opportunity to speak tonight and for considering our application and our mayor's letter. I understand the concern about the amount of existing work before the roundtable, but I think that's the point. We want to help do that work. Palo Alto has proven that we are in this for the long term and that we're willing to commit time, resource, and funding to this effort, and that we are strong and positive advocates on this issue that affects all of our communities. As next-gen evolution inevitably leads to more frequent flight arrivals and departures, noise from commercial air travel is likely to increase. All of us know that cities and residents, both locally and across the nation, have not had the level of representation or priority on commercial air travel policy that we've all wanted. And that for us to reach that level of implementation, representation, and priority is going to take continued persistence and work. We need more impacted communities involved in this effort, not fewer, driving all our knowledge base forward and calling for our united voice to be heard and our concerns to be addressed. And the more communities we have, the stronger our voice will be. This is a long-term effort that will take continued focus, resilience, and resolution from all our impacted cities. There's a great deal of work ahead. I urge the subcommittee to let us do our share in carrying the load on this. We're here and we're ready to work. Please give us the chance to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Filseth. I will now call on Mary Jo Fremont, followed by Jennifer. Ms. Fremont.
Thank you for sharing your thinking on membership. I have two comments. First, one purpose of the committee was to establish criteria under which new members might be admitted. The packet information doesn't show how this was addressed. For example, there is no mention of high impacts criteria. The committee looked at flight density maps, which do not show noise impacts, as Darlene explained. Thus, it's very difficult to identify highly impacted cities. The recommendation implies that criteria for membership must be county-based, as if NextGen never happened and the impacts stop at county borders. So to ensure that new members and existing members are aligned on their needs and to prevent opening up the floodgates, which is a valid concern, the roundtable can use high impacts and geographical proximity criteria for cities outside San Mateo and San Francisco counties. Under these two criteria, 1 or 2 cities would qualify. And my second comment is about the recommendation to encourage the formation of a regional body to address regional aircraft noise. It may sound good, but it's not viable. This roundtable already recommended a regional body in 2014. There is a reason why it still has not happened. As Director Satero stated in June, he concluded in discussion with SJC and OAK that impacts are airport specific and that airports have very different focuses. Thus, a regional approach would not be effective and resources are not there to support it. For example, the San Francisco Roundtable and the SC Roundtable liaison meetings stopped due to a lack of resources on both sides. And let me also add a detail on this regional topic. If SFO arrivals are a regional problem because they cross multiple counties, then SFO departures are also regional problems. They, for instance, affect the East Bay. Roundtables are not organized around a region, a metroplex, or congressional district, like other roundtables around the country. This roundtable is organized around its airport. This roundtable is the official body recognized by the FAA to address SFO impacts, and cities highly impacted by SFO operations like Palo Alto should be part of this roundtable. So please establish criteria to allow highly impacted cities that are outside San Francisco and San Mateo counties to join the SFO roundtable and amend the MOU accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fremont. I will now call on Jennifer, followed by Carol. Jennifer?
Hi, thank you for considering all of these important topics. I have some comments on your presentation that I hope you can consider refining before your main meeting. It's on the non-member equity discussed. You have a bullet point that says that the next gen narrowing of pathways was originally brought up by Santa Cruz County and Santa Cruz. I'd just like to remind that Santa Cruz the problem erupted in March of 2015. And Palo Alto has been attending roundtable meetings since 2014. And so just for example, the FAA came to the Bay Area in July of 2015 And it would be the fastest turnaround that the FAA ever had to hear about a problem in March of 2015 and being at Palo Alto City Hall in July of 2015. What we did in 2014 is actually align nationally with activists all around the country. And if you look at some of the results of that effort right now, you see the National Environmental Survey. The FAA was pretty much compelled to look at the data and do the survey that had been languishing and should have been done before NextGen. You also have the General Accountability Report, that was a result of national efforts. So I really like what Council Member Philseth said about that this is an issue that needs more, not fewer people. And it really goes to your issue of resources and focus, because we are seeing some of the expansion of conversation with the FAA because we worked so hard already in 2014. I do think you need to correct that the narrowing of pathways was brought up by Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz's issue is more the location of the path that went from west to east. And as a matter of fact, we had sourced data in 2014, a big batch of data from the FAA. We lent it to activists in Santa Cruz so that they could produce their reports. What they identified as more the intrusions on Class B airspace. And during the select committee, there was a lot of argument because they didn't think there was concentration and we did and so forth. And we had a back and forth and a debate. But the narrowing of pathways was identified in 2014. The work began immediately. And I can provide documentation of what those efforts were. But I think that it really speaks to the fact that together and with more people, it's better. I don't really have, a preference on how the structures are, but we definitely have to find the quickest way to get there. But I do think it's by really seeing the opportunities from the amount of sweat, that's going to go into this effort. And I think Palo Alto has a lot of resources in that respect. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call on Carol, followed by Laurie Hyder. Carol?
Okay. I'm Carol Ford. I'm also a member of the roundtable. And I wanted to support not expanding the roundtable with other members from other cities. I follow Congresswoman Spears' letter. I think that the resources from San Mateo County are best used in San Mateo County for the people who are most affected by the noise from SFO. And certainly the people who've made arguments about ground-based noise have a point. And so I think we should keep the roundtable as it is and how it has been for a very long time. I think that this roundtable, San Mateo County for SFO, is the first one in the country. And as Congresswoman Spear mentions in her letter, other cities can have their own roundtable, and I think ours should stay the way it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carol. And I do apologize for that. I did not see your last name on here, so I didn't transfer you over. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay, Angela.
Thank you. I will now call on Laurie Hyder.
Hi, thank you for holding this meeting. I live in San Mateo and I'm woken up multiple nights a week by flights that travel into SFO at 3:30 a.m. And I realize that Palo Alto and other communities in the Bay Area are affected by the airport noise, but I feel strongly that San Mateo County has developed this roundtable. Our communities are the ones that are the most directly affected. Some of the flights are just a few thousand feet above our house. The airport noise has changed. I've lived in San Mateo since 1980, and it's gotten much, much worse here. And while I appreciate the concerns of the city of Palo Alto, and I know you've got a great planning department and a very active community, I feel that it would greatly diminish the concerns of the most affected residents in San Mateo and San Francisco counties to have Palo Alto or other cities participate. And I know it's hard to get people to come and attend these meetings. I just found out about it tonight, but I appreciate your efforts and I appreciate your value and what you have done to try and combat airport noise. Fact is, we do have an airport here. We're just all trying to minimize the effects on our communities. And I just feel strongly that San Mateo County has worked very hard to establish this and that our concerns would be diminished by adding in additional members. It's very hard to run a meeting as it is, but to add more than 30 members, I think it would just be untenable. So I recommend that Palo Alto or other cities form another roundtable. So thank you for allowing me to speak. I appreciate the time.
Thank you very much. And Chair Ortiz, that was the last virtual hand raised from members of the public.
Very good. I appreciate everybody coming and sharing their views. Thank you for taking the time. And again, some of the members from Palo Alto have always shared some great information with us. So I do appreciate that they're very well educated on the topic. So thank you for being here tonight. With that, then we should bring it back to the members of the subcommittee, just so that we can all discuss on our final comments on what recommendation we are making to the main roundtable. And so I not to repeat everything we said, but just to confirm that we are all in favor. So I'm going to open it up for comments. Any members want to make comments in response to some of the public comment or to add to this, and then we can talk about what kind of recommendation we're going to make. Anyone? So if not, I think that we all spoke before, and I think we have a good idea of what it is. So what we could do is, and Michelle, you had given me somewhere the wording that and then I can't seem to find it right now. Is it in the agenda?
No, I'm sorry. I emailed.
Oh, it's on the email. I got it. It's right here. Okay. So what I at this point, I guess I'm searching for a motion for the subcommittee membership to recommend to the roundtable, and I'll read you what the proposal was. The Ad-Hoc committee does not recommend membership expansion, and we should not. And so that basically at this point, that's the motion that I'm looking for. So if somebody would care to do that, Terry, please, Member O'Connell, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I would make the motion to not change the membership MOU and to make a recommendation to the main, as a recommendation to the main SFO roundtable, and to also recommend outreach to MTC ABAG for participation into a regional group.
Thank you. Michelle, you have a question?
I just wanted to ask kind of two things. One was you did some discussion on staffing and resource needs, and did you want to add anything to that, or do you want me just to include it in the staff report that you had this discussion and kind of try to summarize some of your recommendations there? That's kind of one question. And then the other is, do you want to put anything in there that says, and we recommend that we not address this through 2024, where the next strategic plan will be done? In other words, the existing strategic plan doesn't include it. So maybe at the end of, or do you just want to leave it open to this could be opened up again in a year?
I don't think for me, my motion would be to put a date on readdressing it. I think that would be up to the next group that looks at the strategic plan. So I would not put that into my motion. I think certainly that once we address to the main group, that we would be able to add some other information to that in an informal manner.
So I have a motion on the table. Anybody want to comment, any comments, or can I have a second, or anyone want to propose an amendment to the motion?
Second, this is Member G.
Member G, second. So we have a motion on the table with Member O'Connell and a second by Member G. Any discussion before we take a roll call? And having no hands raised, we will take it to Ms. Montes for a roll call.
Member G,
Yes.
Member O'Connell,
Yes.
Member Adiego,
Yes.
Member Taylor,
No.
Member Hindi,
Yes.
Member Royce,
Yes.
thank you, Chair. Your motion passes.
Me, yes.
I'm sorry, Chair Ortiz. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay, so the motion passes, and I believe it was that 5-1. Am I counting correctly?
6-1.
6-1. Okay, and before we sign off here, guys, I wanted to say thank you to all of you. I think we were genuinely looking to find a way to do this, and I think that we all arrived at this conclusion after a lot of deliberation. I want to thank staff for all the hard work. We have really spent a lot of time, and there's been a lot of effort to come up with all the information for these meetings. I'm very satisfied that this is a good recommendation, and with that, you guys all have a very good evening. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.